Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today in this webinar regarding meat processing with HPP. We'll give a couple of minutes for other registrants to join us, but we'll start soon. Okay, I think we're ready to start. Hi, Andrew. Hi, Grace. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And today we'll be talking about the different applications that HPP can bring regarding the meat industry and touching base on food safety aspects. Lately, we have seen a number of recalls going on in the meat industry, and that is why Hyperbaric has launched this initiative to talk about how HPP can help you overcome these recall problems and also find some solutions for processing meat with HPP. I am Daniela Soto. I am an HPP food specialist from Hyperbaric based in Miami. I help educate our customers on how to use HPP and find different applications. And also, I lead our HPP testing center here in Miami. Today, we are also joined by Dr. Mary Grace Danao from UNL. She has done a lot of important research regarding the processing of meat with HPP. Also, we'll be joined by Andrew Demakes, the owner and CEO of Demakes Enterprises. He'll be showing how he uses HPP in his own products. So let's start. So let me introduce you a little bit to Hyperbaric. So we are the HPP global leader in the market, manufacturing HPP equipments. We humbly own the 65% of the market share by building these HPP equipments. We are also a company which is R&D driven, and we invest a lot in these R&D projects. Also, we've been around for more than 24 years. We have more than 150 employees in the company. Also, we have installed over 650 equipments around the world. And the HPP market has growing a lot in the last years. Right now, the market that leads the HPP equipment market is North America with 46%, followed by Europe, then Asia, Oceania, and Latin, and lastly, Africa. So as you can see on this graph, in the last years, HPP has boomed, and the installation of HPP systems have grown linearly, as you can see on screen. So I want to introduce on talking about what is HPP technology. Many of you may already know about HPP, which is a technology considered as a preservation method which uses high pressure transmitted by water, and it helps inactivate microorganisms. It is also described as a cold pasteurization processing, and it is described as being cold because we don't use heat to inactivate microorganisms. We use pressure, and pressure held by a certain holding time. So the main parameters and the critical parameters that will be described with HPP will be mainly pressure and holding time. It's important to mention that the pressure that we reach in meat products goes up to 6,000 bars, 87,000 psi. Also, the holding time will be between 3 to 5 minutes. And these parameters will be selected in a case-by-case basis, mainly. Also, the temperature won't be of a lot of importance when talking about HPP. However, we suggest to preserve the cold chain during the whole processing. And you'll be asking, how does HPP affect food safety? And well, as I mentioned before, HPP has the ability to inactivate microorganisms. And the reason why this happens is because HPP will help denature key proteins present in microorganisms, mainly key proteins in the bacteria or microorganisms membrane or in their metabolism. With this, HPP can help destroy pertinent pathogens such as Salmonella, E. coli, Listeria, monocytogenes, Campylobacter, and others. And as well, HPP can help inactivate spoilage microorganisms. Hence, we can help extend the shelf life with this technology. And just to mention, HPP cannot inactivate bacterial spores at the industrial pressures that are applied. And well, this is just an overview of how the HPP applications market look like now. And the market is led by the juices and beverage industry, and it is followed by the meat products industry with 19% of the market. And also, I just want to mention that pet food will act also in the meat products industry, and it owns 1% of it. And it is a market that is constantly growing. And I wanted to mention this in case here joining us someone interested in processing pet food, and this is another application that can be done with HPP. And touching base on the different meat applications and what can be processed with HPP, here I divided it into how HPP will act when talking about lethal processing in these different meat products, starting with the raw meat products where HPP can be applied as a lethal processing and a 5-log reduction of pertinent pathogens could be seen. On the other hand, we have the post-lethal processing. And what I mean by saying a post-lethal processing is that before there was a lethal process in these products, and HPP will act as a post-lethal processing, and this will help to avoid any recontamination after a post-lethal exposure. I just want to remind everyone that HPP processing requires the products that are going to be processed to be already packaged in their final packaging, to then be pressurized by cold water pressure. And that is why it is important to mention that there won't be any recontamination after processing with HPP. So in this, we will get a microbial reduction between the 2 and 3 log reductions of pertinent pathogens. In this category, cured, ready to eat, cooked, ready to eat, and ready to heat meals can be processed. And as I mentioned before, packaging is pretty important when talking about HPP. It's important to know that it must be flexible and water resistant. It needs to be flexible in order to help withstand the high pressures that will be applied, and also water resistant because we'll be using water as a pressurizing medium. And that is why a lot, and mainly a lot of the packaging that is used with HPP is plastic made. And here I show you some packaging formats that by now are compatible with HPP technology. First, this Hormel ham, which is vacuum pack. Also the thermoform vacuum format, as this sausages. Also the skim packaging one, as you can see, this ready-to-eat meal with a skim packaging. And as you can see, a common aspect between these three examples is that this does not contain air. And this is something that we suggest our customers to do because this will prevent to have any packaging malfunctions. And here there are some packaging formats incompatible with HPP. First, I show you this commercial example. This is of our customer that right now uses modified atmosphere in their product and processed with HPP. It's important to mention that in case the customer wants to select modified atmosphere, the packaging should be optimized to reduce the headspace in case they want to add modified atmosphere. Also, paper or cardboard are incompatible with HPP. And here I show you a diagram of why we strongly suggest to reduce the headspace and the air content inside the packaging. And it's because under pressure, air will occupy a volume of 0. So what will happen is that pressure will pressurize that space occupied by air, and the packaging could dent and break. And also under pressure, air will get dissolved into the food product, and after the pressurization, it will try to come out. And some white dots could appear in the product, which after a certain time, they can disappear. And here I show you this example of this sliced cooked ham that was processed with modified atmosphere and HPP with the white dots. And just to mention, this is a frequently asked question, if HPP and the food contact materials interact and is a concern in food safety? And the answer is no. The European Food Safety Agents have mentioned in 2022, while doing an extensive research on HPP technology, that there is no chemical risk and any food safety risk regarding the food contact materials and the treated food product when processing with HPP. And now I'll discuss some HPP key factors, which is important to consider if you're looking to process with HPP. So HPP efficiency in inactivating microorganisms will be strongly dependent on water activity. So the higher the water activity it is, the higher inactivation of microorganisms we will get. So at a water activity higher than 0.96 is the most recommended one and the best you can do when processing with HPP. And the minimum water activity level required is 0.87. So here I divided different meat products into their water activity values and what type of results you'll be expecting after processing with HPP. Again, I just want to mention that this will need to be analyzed in a case-by-case basis. So in case you have questions on this, you can contact me directly to see your product and start suggesting processing parameters and answering questions on this. So the raw meat. Raw meat has been characterized by having a high water activity between 0.99 and 1. You can get a shelf life extension of over 40 days. Also, I want to say that you will be expecting to see color changes in the product after processing with HPP. Later on, I'll touch on some details about this. Also, the processing parameters that are suggested for this application goes up to 87,000 psi, 6,000 bars, which is the highest pressure that can be applied with industrial equipments, for a holding time between 3 and 6 minutes. Then, with cooked meat products, HPP can be applied, and also these products are characterized by having a water activity between 0.95 and 0.99. For these product applications, HPP can be applied as a post-lethal step, as I mentioned before, and can help control pertinent pathogens such as Listeria, Salmonella, and you can also help extend the shelf life for 60 to 90 days. And for this application, again, we'll be using high pressures, 87,000 psi, for holding times, depending on the product, between 3 and 6 minutes. And finally, the ready-to-eat, cured, and fermented meat products. So HPP here again will act as a post-lethal step, and it will help inactivate and control Listeria monocytogenes and Salmonella to help avoid any recontamination in these products. Also, shelf life can be extended for over 60 days in some cases, and for these, again, high pressures will need to be applied, as well as longer holding times, depending on the water activity value and on the product type. So here I summarized a study that I liked by Portofed that made in 2010. And what they did is they processed at different HPP conditions, different Genoa salami samples with different water activity values. And what they did is that they first processed the salami batter, then they fermented it, and then they dried it. And before refrigerating it under refrigerated storage for a certain time, what they did is they processed the product with HPP in order to see how pathogens recovered. And for this, I wanted to select for you how Listeria monocytogenes recovered during this. And as you can see in the graph I showed you in different colors are the different Genoa salami samples with different water activity values. With the straight lines, you have the HPP processed samples, and with the dotted lines, the control ones. You can see how with HPP, this Listeria monocytogenes counts were pretty reduced, and even in some cases with high water activity, they could even reach the detection limit. It was undetectable. So this is why water activity is of high importance when processing with HPP. The highest it is, the more inactivation you will get and extend the shelf life as well. And now, talking about sensory changes obtained with HPP. So here you can see that by increasing the pressure level, you can get a certain type of decoloration and changes in texture. And it will become evident between the 150, 300 megapascals or 22 to 44K PSIs in pressure level range. Also, this discoloration in meat products after processing with HPP is mainly due to the denaturation of myoglobin. And many of you may be familiarized with this protein, but this is a protein which is responsible for giving the red color to fresh meat. So again, remember HPP denatures protein, and it's important to note that the nutritional profile will remain unaffected despite this color change. And the reason why I mentioned this is because HPP does not affect covalent bonds, and that is why nutritional profile will remain unaffected. And here you can see the chicken drumsticks. These pictures and processing samples were taken here at our Miami pilot plant. And I just want to share that there are different solutions to mask or prevent this discoloration. The first one is the addition of marinades, followed by processing of dark cutting beef that currently a couple of universities in the US are doing a lot of research on, and also the optimization of HPP parameters. And today, I would like to expose you these two initial solutions to overcome color changes. The first one, the addition of marinades. This was a marinade that I made here in-house where I added paprika to give this red color, also olive oil, mustard, salt, and pepper to some chicken breasts. And you can see that by even applying 600 megapascals, it still looks raw, but it is marinated. So you can create a value-added product, and the marinade can help mask this color change. And this was also taken here at our HPP pilot plant. And I would just want to mention that after cooking it, we saw that there are no changes between a raw unprocessed product that was marinated compared to a product that was HPP'd and also marinated. Also, the dark cutting beef. Here's an example from one of our research paper of a researcher that has done this research on dark cutting beef processed with HPP. And I want to mention that dark cutting beef currently in the market is highly rejected because of the dark coloration, and this mainly goes to waste. So this application can help overcome this changes effect of having this dark color meat, and by applying HPP you can obtain a vibrant red color after it. So you can upcycle meat and reduce the waste in this product to obtain a more sustainable processing. Also, just to touch base on how HPP can help you produce reduced salt formulations, and the key point on this is that this will help mainly when processing raw meat with salt, and HPP will help bind the sodium to proteins, and again will help promote protein denaturation. So manufacturers could obtain different formulations with reduced salt content, but still with an acceptable salty flavor in their meat formulations. So I tried to summarize 3 different studies that did this type of research on creating reduced salt formulations and processing with HPP their products to see the main effects. And the first one is sausages with frankfurters. And the salt content in this product was reduced from 3% to 2% in the whole formulation of the whole product. And an acceptable saltiness flavor was achieved after processing with HPP. Another example is this with naturally cured wieners. After processing with HPP, the producers and researchers were able to reduce to half less salt content with acceptability scores compared to untreated samples and normal salt content. And finally, the ready-to-eat chicken breast. I found this pretty interesting because it is a ready-to-eat chicken breast and you can still get a reduced salt content formulation with HPP. So what they did is they replaced sodium chloride with potassium chloride, and what they did is that 50% of the total salt content that was in the product was replaced with this other salt. And what happened is that they changed it, and before processing with HPP, they tumbled the product, and HPP helped bind to the sodium to proteins. Also, they noticed that HPP helped absorb the marinade that was applied to the product, and also no flavor changes were seen. I want to mention that when we did the marinated meat products that I showed you in the slides before, I also noted that the marinade absorbed pretty well after increasing the pressure. And just to mention a brief note here, salt cannot be replaced entirely in different food meat products because it is a key ingredient that will favor different properties, mainly in texture, since it will help enhance the adhesion and cohesiveness properties in different deli meats mainly. And also it will help promote the flavor, as we already know. And just to introduce you a little bit to our HPP support program, I'm part of the applications team, and we're a dedicated food science team who can bring and educate our customers in HPP. We can help you deciding on different packaging that is compatible with our technology, also develop different products that you maybe want to use with HPP, and also we can guide you on validation studies. So this is the applications team. You can contact us directly through the email apps@hyperbaric.com. And we lead the HPP pilot plants and HPP incubators, which are the testing centers that I mentioned at the beginning. We bring complementary HPP testing with a purely commercial use. We have by now 3 different HPP pilot plants, one here in Miami, where right now I am based, another one in our headquarters at Burgos, Spain, and finally a new one in Shanghai, China. And just to mention, we can guide you also on food safety regulations and guide you on how to plan and develop validation and shelf life studies. Also, here I wanted to show you this map where you can see different hyperbaric offices. And that was all for my part. Thank you for your attention. And now I'm going to let Mary Grace explain us how HPP can help leverage different meat products with HPP.
Thank you so much, Daniela. Good morning, everyone. As Daniela mentioned, my name is Grace Danao. I'm a research associate professor in the Department of Food Science and Technology at the University of Nebraska, Lincoln. I'm also affiliated with our Food Processing Center, which is the applied research arm of the department. Within that center, there's a couple of us faculty members who serve as consultants when it comes to microbial testing, process validation studies, and also chemical testing. Then my next slide actually shows a little bit more about the center. So we have several different kinds of laboratories that range from analytical food chemistry lab to labeling to pilot plants and such. The group that I lead is in the applied research and engineering space, specifically high pressure processing and engineering services lab. So through this lab, my group and I offer some consulting, certainly some training or workshops, even in the form of like an online course on HPP and freeze drying. We can kind of similar to Hyperbaric's HPP incubator spaces. We can also help a little bit with product development, certainly with process optimization and validation, and then some shelf life studies. So let's get on with the topic at hand. I think Daniela started off the webinar by saying, this is a very timely topic. It seems like these days we see a lot of food recalls, and specifically on meat types of products. The USDA earlier this year in April had a press release that they finalized the policy to protect consumers from salmonella in raw breaded stuffed chicken products. And I know that has been something that's been in the works for a bit of time. And then more recently, over the summer, they also released another press release, and this time with talking about a proposal where they're providing new performance standards in terms and a new policy on reducing salmonella in raw poultry products. So because of the work that we do in the laboratory, we get a lot of questions from industry, from other researchers, whether or not how HPP can play a role when it comes to this changing regulatory landscape. Um, I didn't get a chance to pull some information with regards to salmonella in raw poultry, but in our experience, and if you look through the literature, compared to the typical three pertinent pathogens that we want to control in food products, meaning Salmonella, Listeria monocytogenes, and E. coli 0157H7 and other STEC E. coli. Really, Salmonella and E. coli, both being gram negative, are relatively easier to inactivate with high pressure processing compared to a gram positive bacteria like Listeria monocytogenes. In fact, there's a lot of raw ground turkey that's being used in the food service space where those are treated with HPP, just again to kind of reduce not only the salmonella pathogen and other pathogens, but also some of the spoilage microorganisms that may be present in a comminuted or ground product. So it is happening. You probably have eaten an HPP treated ground turkey before that's been cooked by somebody else, if you've eaten it at a couple of restaurants and like fast food places and such. But as a consumer, we rarely see an HPP treated product at the grocery store, because as a consumer, we can kind of see some of the sensory changes that Daniela mentioned. So for example, you might notice a little bit of a color change with a meat product getting lighter, or perhaps looking as if it's been slightly cooked. And these are just protein denaturation changes that could occur with pressure. The word denaturation is not a bad word. I mean, every time you cook meat at home, you're also denaturing that protein. So same way as heat does that to a raw animal protein, pressure can do and elicit the same thing. But based on the information that Daniela shared in her slides, yes, it's also pretty easy and common to be able to dial down, using the highest pressures that we can use in an industrial or commercial HPP machine, find the dial up or down what kind of holding time you want to use in order to get your desired number of log reductions. So perhaps for a ready to cook product, you may want to have somewhere maybe just a little bit below 5 log reduction. For a raw pet food product that's animal protein based, then we may be dialing and trying to figure out what is the right amount of holding time in order to get a 5 log reduction. And then sometimes if it's already kind of like a cooked product, for whatever reason, you may also start dialing and trying to get like a 7 log reduction. So those are, again, compared to other pathogens like a gram-positive Listeria monocytogenes, the salmonella is actually pretty easy to inactivate. With regards to, let's take the USDA, the latest proposal in terms of like reducing salmonella in a raw poultry product. In this particular case, I guess the question becomes, could HPP then be used as a critical control point or as a preventive control? In that particular case, it really depends on what the product is and whether or not the consumer is going to be willing to pay for the cost of the HPP. It's a safer product for sure. Definitely approaching food safety from a very preventive standpoint is always a good thing. When it comes to the salmonella in raw breaded stuffed chicken products, HPP can also be used as a preventive control. My understanding in how these products are made is you typically kind of have like a raw chicken product or breast, and then it may be slightly cooked so that you can, but it still has to be pliable, that it can be folded around, let's say, some of the what you're stuffing it with. So it could be stuffed with cheese. Certainly, we don't want to cook the product because then the cheese melts and everything. The consumer expects to have not necessarily a fully cooked product when they purchase this from the frozen aisles of the grocery store, but they're meant to be a ready to cook product. So then in this case, some of the comments that we've heard from industry would be like, well, I don't necessarily think we would HPP every single batch of a raw breaded stuffed chicken product, but HPP could certainly play a role as a corrective action. So in cases where you have lots or batches that do test positive for salmonella, one of the things that we have to be cognizant about is also not wasting food. So what do we do with all that contaminated product? So there, HPP may play a role so that it can treat some of those adulterated products and then perhaps be released to commerce. So that's something to for our company and for USDA to consider whether or not the HPP can be used for that particular purpose. Now, when it comes to Listeria, because this is, I think, the more challenging one to inactivate when it comes to raw meats. My group has done quite a bit of work, not necessarily in our own research, but in the services or the testing that we've done for companies over the last couple of years. Most of this data that I'm showing to you in this slide comes from our work with raw pet foods. Now, this is not necessarily human food, but I think there's a lot here that we can learn from when it comes to inactivating Listeria species. So for example, the first two lines that I show here is when you have a ground beef-based product and it's formulated, meaning a particular company has added other ingredients, such as perhaps grains, perhaps fruits and vegetables for sure, and then also some supplements, because that pet food has to be a complete and balanced diet for the pet, whether or not it's a dog or a cat. So in this particular case, that is a product that is quote unquote ready to eat by the pet, but it's still a raw meat product. So that's kind of really challenging, right? Because we know raw meats inherently may have some bacteria in there, but because it's a pet food product, we want to make sure it's not only safe for the pets to consume, but more importantly, for anybody in the household or anybody handling that food, that food is microbiologically safe. So in this particular case, a control non-HPP treated beef sample, we're looking at the first row of data here. We inoculate with 6.65 logs of Listeria monocytogenes. And then when treated with 590 megapascal, so that's close to the 80, very close to the maximum limit of 87,000 psi that we can do with a commercial HPP machine these days, and treat it with 6 minutes using chilled water, we're able to knock down the Listeria populations to about 1 log. So 6.65 minus about 1 definitely gets us the 5 log reduction that we need to render that product safe to be released into commerce. When it comes to like a similar pet food product, this time around ground chicken, again, for control, we normally would inoculate with somewhere between 6 to 7 logs of this a 5-strain cocktail of Listeria monocytogenes. In this particular case, the company asked us to kind of treat it with 7 minutes of holding time. It allows them to kind of really reduce the populations of Listeria mono very close to 1 log. And so then again, it renders it safe to about getting us the 5 log reduction that we need. So the next 2 examples you can see in the table is for a ground lamb that's also formulated, and then for beef livers that are just pureed. So that one is not formulated, but certainly the act of taking it from a whole liver and then grinding or pureeing it down. So therefore, increasing the surface area of the product. Just treating it with 3 minutes did allow us to get from a 6.61 logs count of Listeria monocytogenes, be able to reduce that to about 1.26. So definitely for raw pet foods, being raw meats that are quote unquote ready to eat, because we don't think of cooking the type of raw pet food products that we see in the market. We just, the people who believe in feeding raw end up just kind of, thawing them in the refrigerators and then scooping them, putting them into the bowl. They don't get any kind of heat treatment at home. In this particular case, HPP is seen and is used as a preventive control. We see this quite a bit in the pet food industry, and is not only applied for pet foods that are sold frozen directly to consumers, or sold frozen and then, what do you call this? The consumers end up having to thaw it and maybe, choose to process it further at home. If a company decides to process it further to freeze drying is not considered a kill step. In fact, it's a very good preservation method. So really, in that particular process flow, HPP would be considered a kill step, or as the preventive control or critical control point in the whole process. Now, one of the things that Daniela did mention was kind of, again, some of the recalls that we're seeing currently in the market, and this is where it's also very timely. We know that company Boar's Head has recently recalled over 7 million products from the marketplace because they were able to detect Listeria in a lot of the products that they had. Here, kind of important to look at HPP as a post-lethality treatment, typically used with deli meats. So in this particular case, for those of you who may not know how some of your deli meats are made, typically a company would, get all the ingredients, mix them up, and then form it. Perhaps it looks like more like a chub, or put it in a bag and then cook it. So the cooking step itself, the application of high heat for a certain period of time, is going to be what's considered a kill step. So technically, that's where you should be able to reduce your salmonella, should be able to reduce your E. coli 0157H7, Listeria, maybe Listeria mono, just because at the beginning, if you're grinding a lot of the ingredients and mixing it together, that could be the space where Listeria may also get into the ingredients or the product itself. But the cooking should take care of it. So that's the lethality step, cooking, the application of the high heat. However, most of the time, we might pull that product out of the oven, let it cool very quickly, and then if the goal is to have a product that is either sliced or chopped, so that the end consumer doesn't have to necessarily do those in their own homes or at the grocery store, at the deli counter, then this is now the opportunity to recontaminate that product. And then in this case, the one that we might contaminate it with is Listeria, because it's just ubiquitous in our environment. So you have to have really good manufacturing practices in order to make sure that you have control of Listeria in your processing space. Now, one of the things that we do then is, a company can choose to chop or to dice or to slice those meat products, package them, and then traditionally they may enter a second heating step. So that would pasteurize the product. In that case, we're only really trying to reduce low levels of Listeria that potentially could have gone into the food product. Some couple of years ago, the use of antimicrobials was also pretty, pretty common. So the antimicrobials, the presence of them in the sliced products or in the formulation of the product itself, could also help reduce the amount of Listeria in that cooked, ready-to-eat product. But for those that may want to reduce the amount of antimicrobials or preservatives, or choose not to have a second cooking step in order to pasteurize their deli meats, then that's where HPP can be used as a post-lethality treatment. So in that case, the post-lethality treatment really is applied when you have potential recontamination post-packaging. So like I said earlier, when you cook it and then you bag it, but if you go ahead and touch that cooked product again and there's that potential for recontamination, that's where HPP can play a role and help you control for Listeria. Now, It's interesting because actually the USDA FSIS has approved the use of HPP as a post-lethality treatment since 2004. So I have a grad student, her name is Juliana Nino Fuerte, and for her master's thesis, I kind of challenged her. I said, well, this rule has, there's been no objection to the use of HPP as a post lethality treatment for the last 20 years. There's been research done in this area. We need to go look into the literature and double check, is there anything in the data out there that allows us to pull all of that data from the literature and then maybe come up with a predictive model so that in case there is a process deviation during your post lethality treatment, or perhaps what I call a product deviation. So, for example, if you reformulated, changed slightly the recipe that you're using to make your cooked, ready to eat meat product, let's see whether or not we can predict how you should change your HPP processing step if you're using HPP as your post lethality treatment. So Juliana, helped by another student, sorted through over 900 research papers out there that has been done across the globe by US scientists, Canadian scientists, definitely those from Spain and also from Italy, and just kind of put together all that data. Sure, after the 900 papers actually had a couple of duplications, so it was really just reading 600 papers at the end of the day. We put together this graph that kind of showed how pressure may be affecting the level of inactivation or log reduction that you can get with Listeria species. So most of the papers had Listeria innocua as the Listeria species used in the study, in the microbial challenge study, but some did use Listeria monocytogenes. And we wanted to understand the effect of fat because in some of our other research, fat plays a role in whether or not HPP could be efficacious. So in this particular case, as you can see from the graph, the center point of each dot shows you what the log reduction achieved was at any particular pressure. And then the size of the circle is really indicative of not the log reduction, but how much holding time they used when they applied that particular pressure. And then the color of the circles tell you, what do you call this? How what was the level of fat. So the green circles are your high fat values. Not sure the graph did not, so the color for 25.1 and above didn't show up in this legend when I pasted it here. But in any case, what you should take away from this is, the kill step, getting a really good reduction in Listeria occurs when you're above 500 megapascals and certainly at the 600 megapascals that we typically see in industry. And then the size of the circles, small circles mean a shorter holding time. Those are not going to give you a lot of log reduction. So most of the log reductions, an appreciable one, above 1 log, you should be applying at least 5 minutes to those samples in order to reap the benefit of HPP for a post-lethality treatment. So this is a research paper that we're hopefully going to publish pretty soon. Just Juliana is preparing the manuscript. And so I look forward to also kind of hearing from others when they read this paper, like what else can we do? One of the things that I should point out is even though we found 600 unique papers that touch on this topic, only 16 papers actually reported fat values. So then the data you're seeing here is only coming from 16 papers. So one of the biggest takeaways that I have from doing this particular review is to encourage a lot of researchers, encourage those doing process validation studies to make sure that the fat level is reported in your reports or in your manuscripts, because that information we found in a subsequent inactivation study or microbial challenge study is that there's somewhere between 15.5 to 25% fat, where the fat itself could provide a protective effect for Listeria species, meaning the level of inactivation we see once we have those really high fat, cooked, ready to eat meat products tend to be lower when you apply the same pressure, same holding time compared to when you have like a lower level of fat. So stay tuned, watch out for that development coming up in the next couple of months. And with that, thank you so much for your attention. And I now yield the floor to Andrew.
Thank you, Mary Grace. And now allow me also to welcome Andrew Demakes. The floor is yours, Andrew.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Very knowledgeable information from Daniela and Grace. And so we're on the finished goods side of things. So Demakes Enterprises, I'm sure you all like that picture of me on the top there. It's my family-run business. I'm one of three brothers, and typical family-run shop. Grew up working in the business as a kid. Went away to college, graduated, got some outside experience, and then came back. And really, it started as a meat, hot dog and sausage company back in 1914. But my father really has morphed our company into what it is today. We do all different types of deli meats, from conventional, antibiotic-free, and organic. And now we're much more on the cutting edge of things with marinated meats, shipping those all over the country in a raw format using the HPP. So HPP has helped us become the company that we are today. We were always looking for extended shelf life and making sure that we were able to deliver a product to our customers that was healthy and safe first and foremost, but also was going to maintain its integrity throughout the shelf life. And really, like I said, HPP has helped us really grow from a local manufacturer into a national player. So, as I said before, HPP drives innovation, it diversifies our portfolio, and it gives us a lot of different opportunities all over the country, probably behind Applegate. We're the #2 manufacturer of pre-sliced organic deli meats. But like I had alluded to previously, marinated meats of raw format is something that has become a fast growing category for us. So we're able to take raw chicken and turkey tips, marinate those in buffalo or teriyaki or whatever the flavor may be, honey sriracha, and we're able to HPP that and get 42 days on raw poultry, which is very much unheard of. If you're going into the supermarket, usually you get 7 to 10 days on raw poultry. On the beef and pork side, we're able to take those, marinate those, and get 56 days. And obviously our shelf life testing is surviving 1 to 2 weeks past those dates, but it's an incredibly important part of our process, as that's the kill step, as Grace was talking about earlier in her presentation. So what we do is we take in the product, we tenderize the product, we marinate it, and then we package it, and then we put it in the canisters, as you see above here in the pictures, and we load the canisters up, and then we HPP those. We hold it in the dwell time. I can't give away any secrets here, but what the PSI is and for how long. But obviously, we have to adhere by our SOPs to make sure that, number one, we're taking care of any making sure that the kill step works for the product first and foremost, so that it survives the shelf life that we're putting on there, but also not taking down the quality or degrading the quality of the product. Obviously, that's incredibly important when you're buying in retailers. We also do a tremendous amount of shaved meat and raw shaved meat, and that's just it's not HPP'd. We sell that all over the country in a fresh or frozen product. So we're probably, when that comes, we're making Philly cheesesteaks. So we're doing that all over the country. That's our #1 selling product, and we do that under our label and under our private label. But again, that's a frozen format there, so we're not HPPing those products. These are the marinated meats that I'm speaking to now, and we feel that these have a spot in every single retailer in the United States, because there's really no product offerings like this. They're #1, they're fantastic tasting. They're very versatile. You can cook them on a grill, in an oven, in a frying pan or in an air fryer or something like that, and you're able to get that and serve a family at a reasonable price, under 10, 15 minutes. So again, these are fantastic products that we feel that are going to be game changers in the industry in the coming future, and HPP has enabled us to do so. These are some more options. Sometimes in the north, I'm from Boston area, so in the Northeast, people understand what marinated meats are, but elsewhere in the country, maybe not so much. So they're using skewering. Really, all that is marinated meats, and we're sticking a stick through that. Seems pretty basic, yes, but you know, a lot of buyers out there don't understand the concept of just a bag of marinated meats. So once you put the stick through there, it's really simple. You can, again, throw that on a grill, and just great for tailgating or whatever you're doing for parties, or just serving a family for dinner. So these have really started to take off. I think these are more popular outside of the New England region because of the versatility that they provide with the skewering. As I alluded to earlier in the presentation, our thin and trim line competes against the boar's head, and I'm not going to get on here and talk negatively about boar's head. They're generally considered the gold standard of deli meats. Obviously, they've been having some issues in the past few weeks, which is very unfortunate, and there's been about 9 people that have passed, so that's incredibly unfortunate. And you know, if you're not diligent with your quality control and your quality assurances, unfortunately, there's things like this that could happen. For us, that's not an option. Hopefully, you know, we're always scoring in the 95th plus percentile on our SQF audits, which is safe quality foods. And obviously, we have our USDA inspectors here at all 3 of our facilities 7 days a week when we're working. And they're making sure that we're adhering to all the standard operating procedures that are required for us to put out a safe and healthy product for our consumers. So we have the chicken sausages that are here under our thin and trim line, but then you're going to get into the bulk, deli, and pre-slice. So we're not vertically integrated where we're slaughtering animals and killing animals, but on the reverse end, we're buying the whole cuts, we're processing those, injecting the product like Grace was talking about earlier, with our solution to give it whatever flavor we're talking about. If we're talking chicken, buffalo chicken, honey mesquite chicken, we're talking hams, we're talking black forest, honey ham, Virginia ham, everything has a recipe. And then what we do is we cook and we chill it, and then we can pack it out in full bulk deli packages that you would see behind the case, where Boar's Head has gotten into some trouble recently, but we also are able to slice that and then HPP it and then logistically get it to anywhere in the country. So these are fantastic. You know, Thin and Trim doesn't have much of a brand recognition. Certainly Boar's Head does in the New England area, maybe a little bit. But, you know, if you look over on the right to the chart, you'll see the difference in sodium levels, which Thin and Trim people probably always think better for you products are inferior and don't taste well, like cookies or something like that. But when it comes to deli meat and sodium, look no further than the sodium content to figure out what type of deli meat you're actually ingesting. So when you see lesser sodium, that means it's less water that's being absorbed into the product, which gives you a better all natural eating experience. When you see that slippery, slimy look, that just means it's got a lot of salt in it and put in a lot of water, so there's more soluble product. And since we were into that business on the Thin and Trim, it was an easy transition for us into the antibiotic free and the organic world, where we weren't using we were using no fillers and clean ingredients anyways, and less sodium. So it was an easy transition for us, and it's been very successful. And if you go into an Aldi or a Kroger and buy their private label organic deli meats, that's coming from us. We manufacture all of their pre-sliced organic deli meats. So fantastic products. My father always says you can't make chicken soup out of chicken feathers, so you got to buy the best raw materials. Then you have to minimally process those, and then that's why you're going to get your best eating experience from an actual good deli meat. And again, Boar's Head does have good products. There's no doubt about it. They're very, very expensive, but unfortunately, they've run into some issues recently, and hopefully they'll get that squared away. Again, talked about the antibiotic free and the organics. That's our Water Hill Naturals. Really, very minimal sold under the Waterhill Naturals label. We're mostly a private label when it comes to these antibiotic-free and organic products. And these are some of the customers that we're currently working with. But again, the future hopefully is bright for us. I give a lot of credit to the HPP process and Hyperbaric as a whole. They've been a fantastic business partner of ours, and we're very fortunate to have them on our side. And really, our company's probably gone from about 120 million in sales, 140 million in sales, to about close to 300 million, and hopefully growing into the future. But HPP is something that a lot of meat manufacturers should be looking into if they aren't. It's obviously a large machine, and you need the infrastructure to support that machines. And there's a lot of barriers to getting into that business. But if you're going to be a legitimate solution for retailers in the United States, HPP is certainly something that should be at the forefront of a manufacturer's mind. And so thank you all for your time, and that's it.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you all for joining us. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but we will answer every question via email directly. Thank you, Mary Grace. Thank you, Andrew. Bye.